What if you found yourself in a situation where someone desperately needed you to save their life? Imagine it's 3 a.m. and you're woken by the terrified screams of a woman begging for help. She's someone in your building. You rush to help, but a locked iron door stands in your way. You call the police, praying they'll come in time, but no one arrives. Instead, the officers seem more annoyed by your persistence than alarmed by the horror happening behind that door. This nightmare actually happened. A young woman named Vera Picala, trapped with her violent ex-boyfriend, begged for her life while neighbors tried to break down the door. The police didn't come in time to help her, and Vera's story became a national tragedy in Russia. Today, we'll go deep into Vera's story. We'll explore how her cries for help went unheard, why the police failed her, and what happened to her killer. We'll also see why Vera's story has become a symbol for change and why her memory still inspires people to demand justice. Stay with me as we go through this painful story, one that needs to be heard. By the end, you'll see why we must stand up against failures like this in our society so that no one else suffers Vera's fate. Who was Vera Picala? Vera Picala was born in 1997 in Kislev, Russia. She grew up as a warm, determined young woman who deeply loved her family, especially her mother, Oksana. Vera had a caring heart, always willing to help those around her. From a young age, she dreamed of making a difference in the world. Driven by this dream, she chose to study economic security, aiming to fight corruption and protect people's lives. Vera was also a talented singer, often competing in local singing events and winning awards. Like many, she dreamed of love and a bright, happy future. When she met Vlad, she saw him as part of that future. Unfortunately, her trust in him would lead her down a tragic path. Vlad was a complex man with a dark past, but Vera believed her love could help him. She couldn't have known that her journey for love and kindness would lead her into a relationship that turned dangerous and deadly. Vera's story is one of ambition, hope, and ultimately tragedy, as her trust and kindness were met with betrayal and heartbreak. Vera first met Vladislav Canis, known as Vlad, at a party in 2017. They quickly started dating. Vlad had experienced terrible things growing up. His mother had abandoned him, and his father had died by suicide right in front of him. These experiences left Vlad with deep anger and a drinking problem. Vera believed she could help him heal. Despite her parents' concerns, Vera felt her love could be his salvation. At first, things were hopeful, but over time, Vlad's issues grew. He refused to get a job, leaned on Vera financially, and drank more heavily, putting constant pressure on their relationship. Vera eventually reached a breaking point and decided to move to a dorm, hoping for a new start. However, Vlad wouldn't let her go. He stayed in her apartment, becoming more controlling and possessive. Each step she took to move forward only seemed to pull her further into his grasp. It became a dangerous cycle, where Vera's caring nature led her into a relationship that was becoming a trap, setting the stage for a heartbreaking turn in her life. A dark night in January. On the night of January 13, 2020, Vera went back to her apartment to collect her belongings. She was ready to leave Vlad for good. Vlad tried to keep things calm and offered her a drink. Vera agreed, trying to keep things peaceful as she finished packing. But as the night turned into early morning on January 14, Vlad's behavior grew dark. Around 3 a.m., Vera's screams rang out from the apartment. She was trapped inside with Vlad, who had become violent, attacking her while she cried for help. Neighbors heard her desperate pleas and tried to break down the heavy iron door, calling the police multiple times. About 15 people gathered, frantically trying to help as they listened to Vera's cries. But the hours passed, and the locked door held firm. Vera's struggle went unheard by authorities until it was too late, as Vlad's actions that night turned her hope for freedom into her last tragic moments. This night became the horrifying end to Vera's journey, a night of loss and tragedy that left a lasting impact on her family and friends. Vera Picala was in desperate need of help, but despite numerous calls from her and her neighbors, the police never showed up. When her neighbors called 911, officers brushed them off, saying they were too busy or low on resources. As Vera cried out, her abuser, Vlad, ignored her screams. At 6:30 a.m., just as dawn was breaking, he delivered a final blow, ending Vera's life. Hours of suffering went unanswered by those meant to protect her. Finally, a neighbors broke down the door to a horrific scene. Vera was lifeless and Vlad was still there, drunk and clutching a bloody knife. Only then did the police finally arrive, far too late to save her. Vera's tragic death exposed a deeply flawed emergency system, where calls for help were dismissed and officers were rarely held accountable. The operators who ignored her cries received only a light punishment, a suspended sentence. This neglect cost Vera her life, shining a harsh light on a broken system that failed when it mattered most. The news of Vera's tragic death spread quickly, sparking national outrage. People couldn't believe that a young woman begging for her life had been left alone by the very people who were supposed to protect her. How could this happen? Why hadn't the police acted faster? Vera's family was devastated, shattered by the loss of their beloved daughter. Her mother, Oksana, was inconsolable. She spoke to the media, sharing how Vera was a kind soul with dreams and ambitions that would never be fulfilled. Vlad received a 17-year prison sentence for Vera's murder, but shockingly, he was released early to serve in the Russian army. This early release enraged the public, and Vera's mother, Oksana, was devastated, feeling betrayed by a system that allowed her daughter's killer to walk free. Vera's death became a powerful symbol of injustice, highlighting failures in the Russian emergency and judicial systems. Many were horrified by the lack of accountability that led to her tragic end. People across the country demanded change, asking how a killer could be freed so soon, especially after such a brutal crime. Vera's story inspired protests and conversations about the lack of justice, fairness, and accountability in her country. Her name became a rallying cry for reform, as the public realized that without change, others could suffer the same fate. Vera's death shook the nation, serving as a reminder of the dangers that come with a broken, unresponsive system. A call for change. Vera's story is a haunting example of why justice systems must act with speed and compassion. Her death wasn't just a tragic event, it was a painful reminder of what happens when systems fail to protect their citizens. If the police had responded quickly, could Vera have been saved? Her story forces us to ask hard questions about accountability and the urgent need for reform. If this story touches you, let it be a call to action. Share it, speak out, and remember Vera's name. We owe it to her memory to push for a safer, more just world. Vera's death shook the nation. How could a young woman be left to die, even as so many people tried to help? Her story raised important questions about police responsibility, the treatment of domestic violence cases, and the failure of Russia's emergency response system. The officers who ignored the calls were later taken to court. They were given suspended sentences of 1.5 years, along with a small fine. Despite their neglect, they kept their jobs, adding to the public's outrage. Vera's killer, Vlad, confessed to the murder but claimed he didn't mean for things to go that far. Would Vera still be alive if the police had acted quickly? If this story shocked you, like it, share it, comment below, and speak up against injustice, pushing for reforms that prevent such tragedies from happening again. Thanks for watching.